Like to call to order the Board of Education special meeting work session. We do have a quorum. We have everybody. Yay, we're very thankful for that. We're going to start with introduction of guests, and let's start in the back.
Islam Muhammad, Executive Director, Institutional Executive Planning.
Laura Chandler, Dean of General Education and Transfer.
Business and Workforce Development.
Kevin Parker, and user support specialist too.
Richard Plott, the CIO.
Steve Phelps, Dean of Instruction and Applied Technology, Visual Arts Design.
Nicole Sequeira, Dean of Enrollment Management.
Greg McCown, Chief Facilities Management Officer.
Jan, Vice President of Operations and Finance.
Jamie Harrington, Vice President of People, Culture, and Safety.
Dave Kohler, Vice President, Student Learning and Success.
Welcome to our work session. Anything before we jump in?
No, I'm really excited to have Lisa and Greg on facility strategies and really give the board an opportunity to provide some feedback. I think where we want to go with facilities as a college is a journey we need to go on together. So I'd love to get feedback from you guys as far as right direction or wrong direction from what you discovered today.
All right. Well, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Very excited. Greg and I are here to talk to you about developing a comprehensive college master plan. So today what we have our objectives for what we'd like to do is confirm the need to update our comprehensive college-wide master plan, provide context on how our campuses have changed since the last comprehensive master plan, outline the plan approach, and then just also what the near-term governance actions are needed to move forward with this. I'm going to turn it over to Greg to talk about what a comprehensive college master plan is.
Yeah, so I think this is a good opportunity to learn the difference between a comprehensive college master plan and a facilities master plan. So a comprehensive college master plan, or CCMP, as you've heard, is the broader strategic document. It guides the physical development of the college by aligning facilities with the institutional overall goals, planning framework, and it serves as the long-term blueprint for growth and change. Whereas the facilities master plan is one component of CCMP. You all don't mind me using an acronym, but it focuses more specifically on the physical side of the college. So it looks at how each campus develops over time, including space use and capital improvements. So typically the comprehensive college master plan, or CCMP, is updated every 10 to 20 years, while the facilities or sometimes they've been called just campus master plan, but the facilities master plan are updated more frequently, about every 5 to 7 years, or following the completion of a major facilities project. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple slides.
So just one fun fact, the pictures that you're seeing in here, they're from the old campus or the comprehensive college master plans we have. So this is from the plan in 2011. So these are people that have since retired, but I thought it would be kind of neat if you could kind of see the processes and the pictures that we were using back then as we kind of move forward. So key inputs into our plan has to do with our strategic enrollment plan, our academic master plan, the facilities condition assessment, space inventory and utilization analysis, and then the facilities and IT operational plans. And I put the dates; those are available or will be available coming forward. And really, these are the key inputs that are already underway or completed. And they're going to ground us in data, align with our strategic direction, and reflect both academic and operational realities. However, what's really going to go into the whole comprehensive college master plan is all of these inputs. And so they're really connecting and contributing to one integrated college-wide framework. I do want to note that our mission, vision, and strategic plan is an important input into this, but it's just one of the many that is there. And completing our comprehensive, our CCMP, first allows us to update our strategic plan with a clear understanding of space, infrastructure, and investment capacity, ensuring that our institutional priorities are grounded in what's realistically achievable. So again, it's part of it, but it's also will help direct where we're moving into the future.
Great. So there is an existing AP and BP, excuse me, it's 3250. And so that through that policy or procedure, RCC maintains an integrated mission-driven planning framework, planning data informed, supported by ongoing stakeholder input. I'm just going to read these here. The board provides oversight and review plans requiring approval. And campus and facilities planning is updated on regular cycles. We talked about that in the earlier slides about every 5 to 7 years or when a new facility would come online, which we've had quite a few in the last few years. So this planning approach is consistent with our institutional planning policy and highlights the key points from BP and AP 3250. So, and this really this CCMP process and a true facilities master plan, FMP is very close to facilities management. So it's like facilities management and planning, facilities master plan in accordance with our schedule.
So as we're looking and building a case of why we need to update our comprehensive plan, our current master plans, they're no longer fully reflect today's realities. Think about the disruption of COVID. It accelerated changes and we're not able to accommodate the way students want to learn. We've had shifts in growing emphasis in career and technical that we were not aware of when we put the plans into place. So updating the plan is going to allow us to distinguish essential investments from strategic opportunities, align our decisions with our college institutional planning framework that Greg was talking about, sequence projects intentionally rather than reactively. So in the next few slides, we're going to detail the changes to all the plans that we currently have. But first, I want to talk about enrollment patterns. So you can see the first graph there has to do with post-COVID enrollment patterns. You can see in 2019, distance ed was at 22% of overall FTE, and in 25 we're up 38%. So that need has changed a little bit. Then also looking at our program growth, where we're growing in our programs. In 2022, 32% of it was CTE programs, and we're up to just around 36%. And that's on growing FTE. So we continue to grow in our CTE programs. So again, these changes are reflecting the type, location, and intensity of space needs across the entire college. It's reinforcing the need to really look and update our CCMP. So the college's very first comprehensive college-wide master plan was actually back in 2011. Prior to that, we did a couple of campus facility master plans, RVC in 2006 and 2003, we did TRC. At the time, the plan was reviewed, educational programs assessed we reviewed educational programs, assessed program support needs, considered significant growth and aligned facilities with the college's mission. What's important today is how much has changed since we put that in place in 2011. And we really need to look at what was there and where we're going. So we're going to look at each one of the campuses so you can see how much different it is. So when we look at Table Rock campus, we did update the facilities piece of the facilities master plan piece of the comprehensive college master plan of 2011. It's just for TRC, so it's getting confusing. That's why Greg was explaining what that is. So we just did a little update for the Table Rock campus. And in this particular thing, the development at TRC was supported by the 2016 bond and state bond funds. Most notably, the Health Professions Building was open in 2020. And so what you're seeing here is what was including in that plan, but really what's missing from that plan that was supposed to take us through 2030 is the addition of the Danfoss property, that 10 acres across the street. In addition, we weren't going to put a transportation technology center on this campus. We are now. And so we really need to update that plan to bring those two items forward. When we're looking at Riverside campus, again, what was put into the 2011 Comprehensive College Master Plan is what is there right now. And so when you're looking at what was there, the original plan assumed operations across 6 buildings. We also had a space in the library. We've sold one of those buildings. We're no longer in the library, the Jackson County Library, and we have 2 buildings for sale, so they're vacant at the moment. We were also supporting dental and allied health programs in one of our buildings in downtown, and we're no longer doing that. So today, we're operating out of our 2 buildings, the HEC and also B building. And what we need to look at is updating that plan to account for what the property is that we're going to use, and a potential of a remodel or a redesign of B building. And then the potential to use A building if, while we're remodeling B building, if that's something that's decided through that plan. But we really need to make an adjustment there. When we look at the Redwood campus, again, we updated that plan in 2019. And we introduced campus zonings to establish the clear campus core, moving support services out of the center towards the perimeter, and then identifying areas that are for private-public partnerships. So the picture there is actually all of those zones. And if you look at the very top of the campus right here, this was identified for private-public partnerships. Again, all of the things that were put into that plan were built around the 2016 bond and the state funds that we received. The science building, the allied health building in 2025, science building in 2024, and then the massage building in 2023. So things have changed with the placement of these buildings, but also when we look forward to where we're moving now, the transportation center originally in this plan was in a different location on the campus, and it was a different size. And so that is something else that needs to be updated in that plan. And then just also looking at all the zoning, we haven't accomplished what we had intended originally. So continuing to work towards that, and then also looking at the private-public partnerships if we still want to identify that zone at the top of our campus as part of that. So with that, Greg's going to talk about the next steps and what's needed to develop a comprehensive master plan.
Great. Thank you. Well, there's 6 primary phases here, and we've given an illustration up here with some of those steps. And so the key activities with the project initiation, is to form a steering committee. AP 3250 actually talks about that. Secure a design professional, create and approve a project charter. And then the outcomes from that would be to defining governance, a scope, and a decision-making structure. So the key activities for phase 2, which is the program review and assessment, is to establish vision and goals, collect data on programs, facilities, and space utilization, evaluate current conditions and constraints, and the outcomes of phase 2 would be a shared understanding of the existing state of future requirements. The third phase is for stakeholder engagement, and the key activities in that is to identify both internal and external stakeholders, encourage participation through an inclusive process, hold public forums and engagement opportunities, analyze those the needs, the constraints, and possibilities. And the outcome of those key objectives and activities is the extensive input and enhance the plan and fosters trust amongst the community stakeholders. The key activities for phase 4, which is the concept development, is to create alternative concepts for campus development. And you saw some of the pictures where the design professional was standing with the community members, and in the background, you can see different alternative campus developments. Plans for building, utilities, transportation, and parking, open spaces, And this is all critical because it establishes a long-term framework, facilities, near-term implementation, and is crucial for upcoming bond planning. And the key objectives for phase 5 for review, refinement, and approval is to review the draft plan with the internal and external stakeholders, provide that feedback and integrate it into the plan, prioritize objectives and strategies, finalize the plan for board approval, and then ultimately the outcome being a clear, actionable, and approved district master plan for all 3 campuses. So quite a bit going into those phases. And then the last phase, of course, is funding to be able to move forward and implement that plan.
One of the things on the funding, having that full plan together then allows us to understand what the near term, what we would like to do now, what we would like to do in the future. If you remember, as we were talking through those slides, majority of those projects were done with the 2016 bond from that 2011 campus master plan that we were able to bring forward. So it is important with all of the changes that we've seen over the last, 12 years, really to consider what's happened and update our overall plans so that we can move forward looking at funding moving forward. It gives us the ability to show what we need, apply for grants, find donors, consider if we want to go out for a bond levy or not, depending on what happens. So we were really quick. I apologize. We usually speak a lot more and spend a lot more time, but that's all we have. We're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Go back. Absolutely. I want to make sure I understand. Oh, and Audrey's thinking, I can see this right now. I just needed a couple more, little bit longer to just look at the slide. So go ahead.
I'm curious as far as maybe you haven't put this all together yet, but as you may remember, several of us were involved in the Redwood planning. I remember some of those things. Is there an opportunity, or maybe the board is not going to get involved early? Because we were at that point, the bond oversight committee was, involved in that kind of operation. And I'm picturing there are a couple different ways this can work. One is, you could just periodically bring that material to us, but we wouldn't be involved with the hearing all of the pros and cons and decisions and that kind of stuff. What's the concept on this one?
So during that project initiation is where we're putting that steering committee together and determining who should be on that committee to help move us forward. So that's when we'll start determining, of course, the board would be participating in that. I don't remember at which level.
Committee? Or determining who the steering committee is.
Yeah, it's really under that BP and AP. It's the president's appoints the steering committee.
Yeah.
And in the past, you are right. No, past you were right. When we had a bond oversight committee, we did have members. I think there was at least 2 members of the board that participated in that process.
So I'll reframe it this way. At the conclusion of this work, we would want to make sure that we have a plan that this board can best and most fully endorse. So you tell us what level of involvement you guys want to have to get to that point. I don't want to go through a process where you're like, that looks neat, but you didn't involve us. No, thank you. And I don't want to go through a process where you're like, seriously, you're involving us. So I like, what we want to know is what's your appetite to get to a point where you're like, we fully endorse this.
And I got Pat next and then Gary, okay? Pat, go ahead.
In the discussion leading up to this, you might have had something about it, but I'm not sure. I might have missed something. Is proposed demographic changes wrapped up into this strategic plan?
Yes.
Okay. I saw the numbers. I saw what you had there, but and I don't know, that shifting from traditional transfer student to CTE student, that broadens the base of people that potentially could come to the institution. But we know the pipeline going into the K-12 system is getting smaller as time goes by, and it will affect us. But conversely, we have the CTE stuff going. I want to make sure that that's all baked into the cake, let's so to speak. So,
yes.
And Pat, you bring up as putting my old enrollment hat on, a real issue we hear a lot when we talk about the enrollment funnel when it comes to let's look at K-12 enrollments. Nicole and her team's done some really early preliminary work on census enrollments. We may not see the decline in K-12 in the Southern Oregon as deep and steep as some others. You have to remember we're faced with K-12 dealing with attendance and completion issues that they're leaning into. So if they can complete a higher percentage of their students, that's more eligible for us. But also we're dealing with a very high number of non-post-secondary participation in our adults. So that has, I mean, when I think about a plan for 15, 20 years, I'm less worried about population because we're going to have so many adults, even with a high school diploma, who didn't participate in college, who are going to come for career training. You go to many of our programs, you see 20s, 30s, in their 40s, age students, particularly in CTE programs, but plenty of transfer programs too. And so it's going to be probably less about the numbers, I would say, for this, but probably after this one, we could really be looking at birth rates and that, and more about, are we situated to serve the students we need to be serving, where we need to serve them, and how we need to serve them. Our college has changed a lot. 30 years ago, Jackson County wasn't part of the equation. 10 years ago, in-person transfer was our driver. Now we have more dual credit. Now we have more CTE. Now we have more online. And that's really kind of part of what we have to look at here is those demographics. And I'm going to use the next word there, projections. What are we projecting and how do we want to be position? We've been very responsive, and responsive is hard because it takes 3 and 4 years to respond, and it's not uncommon to miss an opportunity because we didn't project.
Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Greg and Lisa. I was thinking about how you were defining, Greg, the facilities plan sort of sits within the comprehensive plan. And so maybe my first question is, where does the strategic plan fit within this context? Because that then would answer part of Randy's question about what's the board's involvement in.
So we probably should have paid bingo on who's going to ask that question, but I was prepared to answer it on behalf of the group. And the reason strategic plan fits here is because the strategic plan is probably going to be more outcomes based. And it's got a much shorter, we're going to have multiple strategic plans over the life of a facilities plan. So the next strategic plan, while far from fully baked, we can anticipate if we're consistent with what we're thinking, it's going to be around some kind of big focus around student achievement, student outcomes, something that we do to serve our community. We'll have to work backwards and say, well, how does our facility help us achieve that? We've done academic master plans already. We have facilities conditions that tell us, well, we're going to have to do these work to this facilities regardless of what district. We're going to, for the foreseeable future, at least offer these academic programs. I don't think you're going to see in the next strategic plan a very specific program focus as it is overall overarching student focus. So it's going to be less about facilities. However, what we might find is we want students to be more successful. And in order to be more successful, they have to get started right, which means we have to focus on front door. But if we wait for the next strategic plan to start this work, it's always a never ending cycle and we'll never get there.
I agree that the answer is not a binary one or a simplistic one. But it would seem to me that looking at demographics and looking at the needs of the community, that public health, for example, might not have been obvious in 2011, that this was an unmet need. Hence the need for the strategic process to be more nimble and that would be more evolving in nature. And one doesn't know then when the board might need to approve a bond that would then solve a problem that was identified, in that process. But it would just be helpful to me, at least to see some kind of visual overlay, some concentric circles of how the processes integrate and sort of work together. That would be just sort of knowing, well, here's where the board might, exert some influence. My question though is, are any of the jurisdictions like the county and the various cities that the college serves, have they asked the college for an institution master plan that they've required to say, gosh, we have a policy, we haven't seen RCCs, or are the various governmental entities sort of silent on that and don't require a major institution?
I think I can answer that one. We haven't had any of those authorities having jurisdictions ask us for those plans. However, when we rezoned this campus to provide more offerings for like baccalaureate programs and that kind of thing, we actually took the master plan at that time, the 2017, and asked them to adopt that into their plan so that they knew exactly what we were planning on for the next several years per that iteration of that plan. So we can do that.
Okay. So the Growth Management Act doesn't require the various entities, colleges, universities, other major institutions, Asante and other major employers to produce some type of, here's how many workers we're going to need to meet demand, here's how many people we're going to be planning for. So as Medford builds more communities, housing developments, we've got more population, therefore we may need more healthcare, et cetera. We don't have that kind of
wish there was that kind of relationships, and I know what you're saying, but we're not at that point of maturity yet with our jurisdictions on like, we're talking about how might we build an economy together, let alone what would it look like. And I mean, I often say that when I'm in the community, we want to be your workforce training provider. It's going to help us a whole lot more. Know what jobs you want us training for the next 5, 10 years. And so that's part of the future economy. And that's going to be one of the hard tasks here is, if this region were to say, okay, we're going to go all in on farms, so add agriculture. We're going to go all in on data centers, so do automation. And we're not there yet. So we're at a crossroads. I mean, I love that. That was kind of a statement of something I was in Portland the other day. It's like we're talking about, Oregon at a crossroads with its economy. Southern Oregon very much is so. And I think we have to look at what those are. And I fully anticipate things getting more mature in Southern Oregon and us having to pivot a little bit and say, oh, so for example, if our jurisdictions can say, yeah, we need you to be able to do this kind of workforce training, which is something I'm very accustomed to in the past. That's something Lisa's team or Dave, I mean, all same umbrella, but it's not going to be uncommon to have people say, we want to do this workforce training. We want to bring this, we don't need an academic program. You're going to see more of that. Or you may see people say, we need more accountants because we're going to turn into there. But I can't even say we're very near as a region saying we want to be this kind of an economy in the foreseeable future.
Yeah. I'll just add a finer point to that. And in my field in healthcare, we all have to do community needs assessments and our strategies for meeting the need in that community. So those plans exist. Asante has one, Providence has one, we have one. There is no one gathering all of that and saying, here's the roadmap. It doesn't mean that you all in your stakeholder input process can't gather that information and say, here's what Asante says, here's what La Clinica says, here's what Providence says, their growth initiatives are, and their limiting factors. It's there, it's just not.
See, you can pull from like Medford, the furthest along in community. Handy. So there's things we can extract from to inform this, but there's not really that coordinated effort that really it's going to be a little muddy, but I think it'll be an important process. And I think we need to build it with flexibility in mind. And that's kind of something, if we talk with an architect, they're gonna tell us when we get, like, we're gonna have to build future-proof buildings anyhow. You see that, like, if you walk through the E building in Grants Pass, that's mobile furniture. So if we need to use that stuff differently in the future, we don't have fixed furniture there. It's like, well, that's handy. It's not gonna work for anything else in the future. That kind of thinking where we put machinery in a CTE building that lasts for 5 years, and then we need to replace it with different machinery because we're no longer doing boat welding. We're doing concrete wall prefabrication training, and it's gonna have to look a lot different.
I just wanted to follow up on something that you shared around and that finding that sweet spot of stakeholder input, and in particular with the board. I think if we could have a sense of, here's the community need, here's the organization's current capacities, and here's our growth initiatives, and like if we could have a sense of what that is, and then knew, hey, you're going to build your growth initiatives around this real clear understanding of all of those three elements. I don't know if I would need to be involved from the beginning, right? Just I would, I'd want to just know, here's the process and here's the data that you're looking at. And then I would be very confident in you all's ability to create something that would meet the need without getting in your hair.
Okay, so I'm thinking that will be part of our charter when we start developing that.
And one of the things when you talk about what informs this, a heavy lift of part of what we talked about is fed into the academic master plan. So the academic master plan, within it, there's designed to do needs forecasting, and the needs forecasting is both job growth and anticipated retirements. And so our academic programs have that running like clockwork on how are we doing projections, where might there be projected need, because sometimes, right, we get industry come to us and tell us about their need, and it's like, yeah, there's 5 needed in the valley and you need 4 of them. That's not a program. And so, it's a one-time training kind of thing. And so they do really good analysis for academic programs and opportunities where the largest jobs are. Some of that stuff comes from our partners with the state. But we also use a tool like CAS that really helps with that. So it'll be very data informed. But part of the decisions we are going to have to decide as a college then is we can look at forecasting, but we can say, what do we want to do? What do we want to repeat? Where do we want redundancy? So we made a redundancy decision with transportation. We made redundancy decisions with some of our healthcare professions. We're not going to be able to make redundancy decisions on everything we offer as a college based on scalability, and that's going to have to be, somewhere we have to draw a line and say, this is where it's important for us, and this is where we're not going to prioritize. And some of that redundancy may be around service and support, things that we do at all 3 campuses. We spend a fair amount of resources duplicating and triplicating, a lot of support services, and we're in no position. I had conversations, I spoke to Downtown Medford Association, I think just last week, about, there's still a strong perception that we're walking away from Medford. And I was candid and said, we don't have the infrastructure to walk away from Medford in any kind of foreseeable future. The only science labs we have, which is a very high enrollment program for us in Jackson County, are downtown. We're not leaving. What it looks like, how we're there, for a number of years, but they need to hear that from us and see that as part of our plan. And I understand why those questions come up because of considerations that college had to make not too many years ago. But now, I mean, we're years away from ever talking about what a not two presence in Jackson County would look like, but we get asked those questions in the community a lot.
One thought, Greg, you mentioned that the maintenance plan that you had brought to the board a year ago or so was really one of the first capital maintenance plans that the college had seen, I would think that the maintenance plan would sit somewhere under this comprehensive master plan as well. So thinking about, the future and sort of backwards planning, if that plan becomes a part of this and the board then is going to, approve or act on a bond, that would all kind of put a bow onto the work that you're doing to make it sort of a complete project.
And I would see, when I look at that, I see facilities condition assessment and the facility opera plan that's already kind of part of it. So I agree, Gary, that all those different plans I see as funneling into our.
They're there, and what you often see is scenarios where even when you have fixed and finite resources, and this is how in Oregon we develop the haves and the have-nots. Because many schools may say we can create an environment where we can survive by doing facilities condition and dealing with deferred maintenance as best we can. And then you have schools that say, well, we can get capital bonds and that's how we build new buildings. And so all we have to pay for is deferred maintenance out of general operating. We can get a lot done. If we have to do all of our new buildings and deferred maintenance out of general operatings, it makes it really tight. And so that's, what Greg has is our have to do list and the facilities conditions. And then we have how do we want to respond to what our communities need best list. And so we're always going to have deferred maintenance, but there are examples of, and that may be part of our next bond. I mean, that's why we want to talk through it in that where deferred maintenance, certain parts of deferred maintenance can be included. There's certain parts of deferred maintenance that aren't eligible for capital bonds, and we'd have to kind of sort through that. But, we have plenty of opportunity, both need opportunity and it's been so refreshing the last couple of years to see our community respond to if we deliver things in a certain way, they'll come to us. And we're getting to the point, I mean, we've gotten there in no credit where we can't keep offering it in this way, this out without some additional support. And we have to call that question for them.
Oops, sorry. I was working my way down.
I'm fine with being more hands off because you do a really good job of giving us the data and the reason. So I would want to see that when you talk and make your decisions, what was it based on and the data that drove that decision? You usually do a really good job with that, and that would be enough for me. And then I'm curious on the online. So that was an significant increase. And so I'm wondering, do we expect that to keep going up or do we think it's kind of peaked off?
It's cooled a little bit. So what you saw, and if we were to look at a different enrollment chart, was right the spring of 2020 and the 21-22 school year, the spring of COVID, and then the following year was predominantly online, particularly for lower division transfer courses. CTE made it trickier. And so we have in some of those enrollment charts we provide you from time to time how our courses are delivered, and you can see online how it grew. And then it's regressed, but it's regressed now and probably created close. It's flattened out a little bit, but that flattened out is higher than pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So we're seeing is, yes, it slipped back down, but our new normal is going to be a higher percentage of our enrollment is going to be online than it was pre-pandemic. But it wasn't everybody's moving online and they're all going to stay there. It's regressed, and I think that percentage we're seeing now that is distance around 38 is probably going to be kind of the new normal. So you saw 42%, 74%, like that's, but that 38 is higher than the 22 at the top. And so we're probably going to be at or more than a third of our enrollment as online, because even as students move to CTE, they may need transfer courses that they could take online that works with their workforce options a little better. We serve a very high student population who balance school with work, and online is a very flexible option for people who balance both.
Are the online classes Does the instructor work also from home or do they need a little space? I mean, they don't need a classroom. How does that work? Just curious.
Dave was itching on it. So there's hybrid classrooms, and there's, it depends on the courses that we do. So some of the things that we can do today that we couldn't do not very long ago was we might teach an engineering class that's hard to get enrollment for, but if we could teach it in this room and another room simultaneously, you could get 17 students in it. So that might be what we call synchronous, where they're doing it all at the same time. And then asynchronous is kind of on their own time. And that would be very much their.
So a lot of it is classroom and online too? Like, is that what
Can
you're
be.
saying?
Dave, you wanna?
Sure, yeah, we have lots of different types of delivery options. You're referring to like high flex, so we've got options where they're completely synchronous, so Zoom, right? So everybody shows up at 1:00 PM on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and everybody's there live on Zoom, so that's a virtual option. There's the asynchronous model, which, as Randy was referring to, that's on your own time, sort of, right? I mean, they have modules that they have to get through, so you can't just do everything all at once. You have to go through a series of modules to complete the course, and modules open up, weekly or something like that. Then there's options. The other high flex options are where you might come to campus maybe once a week. And then the remainder of the course is online in either some sort of synchronous or asynchronous format. So it really just depends. Your question about where those instructors are working depends on the instructor, depends on the class, depends on the delivery options, all of those things. So we're working to accommodate those students in as many different ways possible.
Okay, I asked because I'm just wondering how that affects facility classroom space because that went up. Do we need less or it sounds like?
It's a great question. And so, those are things that we consider when we're working with facilities to work on, hey, this is what we're seeing the needs are. These are the trends. So I was going to share in my update that this winter term, we're now in the third week of our term, and what we're seeing from the trends from this term are that even though we're increasing our FTE and headcount and credits compared to last year, we're seeing a increasingly amount of face-to-face courses. So students are preferring to come back to campus more so than taking those asynchronous type. So maybe that's a result of, back in 2020, 21, going through the pandemic, and now we're coming back to students wanting to be more on campus and more connected. So we continue to watch those things because, as you mentioned, that's really important for us to determine what are our needs with respect to classroom technology and delivery in the future.
There's just sometimes things that ebb and flow too, where you may have people pursuing workforce training, and if unemployment is really low, they're working and they're going to have to choose a distance because it works better. Whereas as unemployment starts to creep back up, people have more time on their hands and they can go with their preferred, personal option, which is to be in person.
Part of this process is a space utilization as well as a review and report out. So some of that will be evaluated as part of that piece. And if you go back to that one slide, it's space inventory and utilization analysis.
So share with us, if you will, kind of next steps as far as we had the steps, but within that, like, where do we wanting to go from here? And to your point, like, what we don't want to do is go behind the scenes and build a really big plan and say, okay, here's the first cost associated with the thing that we adopted. There'll be periodic updates saying, okay, here's where we're at, regardless of board level of involvement. Here's the inputs. Here's what we're learning from it. We're at a decision point, want to get some feedback. And when we really want it to be inclusive, because I fully anticipate at the back end of this, one way or another, whether it's a bond, whether it's a campaign or something, we're going to ask for a lot of buy-in from the board. And in order to get buy-in from the board, you guys have to really feel comfortable with where we're going.
So the first step is putting together a steering committee, right? Because that steering committee is then going to help you build your charter, going to help select your design professional, and then help just move it all forward in all the steps. So that's our first step. So starting next week, building that committee of who's going to steer this whole project and who needs to be on it.
In the 2011 version, how many was that? What was the number for your steering committee? Like, how many members were there?
A wonderful question.
You can get back to me. It's fine.
I will get back to you.
I just was kind of trying to scale, I'm trying to think about scale in my head and what does that look like? And I agree with, these guys around, like, there's a level of involvement from the board that's needed before we get in your way. We don't want to get in the way of doing the good work.
I think that this one will be much different. So when I look at all the highlighted in blue, those were our key inputs that are on this slide. The demographic projections and enrollment plan is something we had in 2011. I know that we did. When I think back, and again, I was an accountant, I did a slightly different job, but I don't believe we had an academic master plan. We did not have a facilities condition assessment done. We did not have a facilities and IT operational master plans, and we did not have a space inventory utilization assessment. We didn't have those key pieces. So that steering committee helped build all of that back in 2011. And so we do have a lot more data to start with. So when we look, I will bring back that information, but I do think it'll be slightly different because we have some more of those inputs that we didn't have before.
So you're anticipating we will put together a steering committee. From there, we probably will have some form of an RFP process to get somebody externally to help us. But, I think the reason the steering committee can be beneficial is as we're putting out an RFP, we want to give some guidance. So we can say, we want to lean heavier into leveraging, existing square footage, or we want to put more into this campus than that is because of, the summer, they're going to approach their proposals a little bit different. That's what the steering committee can do. But as soon as we get some parameters, we're going to put out an RFP to get some support. This isn't just something we're going to go about blind.
And we'll bring back an update as we bring that steering committee forward and put those processes into place, definitely.
What else from the?
I'm wondering, Lisa, if your approach to figure out like what is the need. I mean, it might be so beyond what we can do, but it would be really great to start with, have a really good sense of, instead of saying we have this facility that we can expand in this way. So, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because I've been involved with so many projects that, you build it based on what you think, sort of a limiting thinking on what you think you can fund, what you think you can support. And then, 5 years later, you're busting at the seams and you wish you would have said, what is the true need? And of course, predicting future is hard, right? Something could change drastically, but based on what we know now, what is the real need, and then figure out how to back into that with our current facilities and footprint and capacities.
I love that.
I appreciate the support and the direction of this conversation, and I think I agree with everything that's been said. I'm gonna throw an "and" in there. And we have the reality of the way state capital project funding works, that you're up against a clock, and if you don't put your slot in at your next available, you're leaving money on the table. And so we will be eligible, and we know how fast it took us with transportation technology, but we'll be eligible in the next biennium to put another project in the hopper. And there can be some flexibility. The scope of that can change a little bit, but I think it would be in our best interest to put some form of a project in the hopper, knowing that I don't know where we'll be with the facilities, the campus master planning process when that time to submit is, but I would think it's in our best interest to put something in. And so the most obvious thing for that is something that is flexible, not overly defined, that leverages vacant square footage on this campus. I think when you think about the Blue Room, you think about Danfoss Building, you think about vacating Diesel Technology, revisiting that vacant square footage will spend up that money in a hurry. And then we'll have to say, well, probably what's tied to that in the campus master plan might be tied to being early project, first project because of that. So I just throw that out there that I don't have a specific project, I don't have a program, but I encourage us to think about how we might get that placeholder in our ticket in there, because I don't know how competitive it's going to be now that it's moved from $8 to $12 million too.
Yeah. And we're talking about this time next year.
No, we're talking April 26th of this year is due.
We're talking.
I just got the email today.
So you put it in April, you don't hear about it till long set, like when do they? Well,
Next regular session.
So
Next regular session, but there's time, right? There's time to make modifications during that time, but we need to get something in.
it will be next regular session, but before that, then we work on it as OPC and with HEC to prioritize, because we take them one list. Here's the college's projects. We don't compete against each other in front of the legislature. We compete against each other and say, here's the here's a single list. So between April and then, but I think, yeah, by April 26th, we'll want to have something we feel comfortable putting in there for consideration.
Right, and then the funding doesn't come till the following year after the second year of the biennium, right? So yes.
So we got
Long lead.
funding in 26. Oh, no, 25. When did we got funding for transportation?
24.
Way before that, actually.
No, but the actual funding, when we put the money in and they sold the bonds.
They just sold the bonds in 24.
20.
No, last year, 25.
25.
26. So spring of 25 is when they sold the bonds.
They sold them in spring of 25. So we're not on the list for spring of 27.
Correct.
So we're talking about bonds that will be sold spring of 29. And in order to do that, we got to get the list April 26. That's how long it takes. Is you want to be on a list of April 26 if you want money in spring of 29.
Gee.
That's why you want to put a placeholder in there that's got some flexibility, some change the scope. And that's why I think that's the easiest thing for us to define by then. But otherwise, you're talking about 31 as the next time you're going to get dollars.
Right. Anything else you want to add?
We'll be out.
All right, we will end our work session and resume our regular session at 5 o'clock.